Remember that one time when you got chain CC'd and Anubis pressed 4 and did 3000 damage to you? You probably think that's the most damaging ability in Smite, don't you? Well, it's not, so continue watching if you want to find out what does more damage than Anubis ult. There's a few abilities I'm going to be excluding from this list for various reasons. Hades Devour Souls, since it relies on minions, and you know, if you have enough minions you could do any amount of damage with it. You know, if you have no minions it's garbage, if you have like 300 minions stacked up it'll one-shot someone, so I'm just not going to bother including that one. Anything based on percentage health damage like Nemesis Ult, Jeb Ult, and any kind of execute like Thanatos or Arclanxes. Because the game says they do 9,999 damage, but I don't think they actually do. It just does the amount of damage based on how much health they have left, but in the damage report it says 9,999, which would be pretty unfair to just have a list of executes. And lastly, abilities like Vulcan's Turret and Calder, where you just cast them once and if they're not killed they can do infinite amount of damage, because also it's just unreliable how much they would actually do, so I'm not going to include those either. Since these abilities have scaling as well as base damage, I'm going to be using a specific build for magicals and physicals. Magical build is going to be Shoes of the Magi, Book of Thoth fully stacked, Spear of Desolation, Obsidian Shard, Rod of Tahui, and Soul Reaver. Gives a total of 716 power. Physical build is going to be Warrior Tabai, Transcendence fully stacked, Jotun's Wrath, Brawler's Beatstick, Titan's Bane, and Shifter's Shield. 321 power. Coming in at number 5 we've got Hades, Pillar of Agony. 105 damage and 30% magical power scaling per tick. Ticks every 0.5 seconds for 4 seconds, giving a total of 8 ticks. That totals up 840 base damage with 240% scaling, which totals out at 2,558 damage total with the builds that we have. At number 4 we've got Zeus, Lightning Storm. 180 base damage with 50% magical power scaling per tick. Ticks once every second for 5 seconds, giving a total of 5 ticks. That totals out to 900 base damage with 250% magical scaling, for a total of 2,690 damage. At number 3, we've got the only physical ability on this list, Bastet, Cat Call. Each cat can do 65 damage at plus 20% scaling per hit. Each cat can hit 10 times in the 10-second duration, once per second. So with 3 cats that's 30 hits total, which gives 1950 base damage with 600% physical scaling, which ends up in total damage of 3,876. Back to magical abilities for number 2, it's Anubis' Death Gaze. Probably the one a lot of you thought was going to be at number 1, and to be honest I did before I started doing research for this. It's got 43 base damage plus 15% magical scaling per tick. Ticks every 0.1 seconds for 3 seconds, giving a total of 30 ticks. 1290 base damage with 450% magical scaling, giving a total damage value of 4,512. Before I get to the number 1 spot, I've got 3 honourable mentions. There's Vulcan's Earthshaker, which came out at a total of 2,528 damage, just slightly below Hades' ult, that was very close. With different scaling values, you know, a different build, it could have probably been another 5. There's Yanis's Through Space and Time, providing it's at max range, and it gets the full scaling value at 2,390 damage. And there's Isis Circle of Protection, providing it's at max charge, does 2,373 damage. And taking the cake for the most damaging ability in Smite, it's Kabrakan's Tremors. This one is probably quite unexpected by a lot of people, but since it has a 10-second duration, it actually turns out to be ridiculously high damage if you stand in there for the entire 10 seconds. It's got 62 base damage plus 35% magical scaling per hit. It's 20 times in the duration, every 0.5 seconds for 10 seconds, with 1240 base damage and 700% magical scaling if you hit all 20 ticks, which with the builds we have gives a total of 6,252 damage.